Hello, viewers. There is a kind of cold war brewing between the Israel lobby, Netanyahu, and Donald Trump. Provided the fact that 79% of the American Jews actually voted for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump because of Donald Trump's unpredictability and because of its, kind of a loose cannon status. Netanyahu, even after Donald Trump's rebuke, accepted the fact that Biden actually won the disputed elections, and Donald Trump, I think, will never going to forget this. So I have a feeling that the Israel lobby right now is kind of a bit disappointed, and they will do their best to destroy Donald Trump's policies if they go against the Israel lobby and against the state of Israel. Just a small bit about the state of the so-called liberal Western mainstream media. See, last weekend we saw with our own eyes how they defied the videos which were clearly suggesting that the Zionist crowds roaming around the Amsterdam streets were tearing Palestinian flags, were hurling, racist Arab songs, were kind of chanting slogans of death to the Arabs. They misrepresented that fact, and all of them suggest that it was actually the Zionist crowd who was under attack. This kind of behavior, this kind of washing of the eyes is all to see. Nobody trusts these media outlets anymore. Just a small discussion about the possible likely scenario of how the Ukraine and Russia's maps would emerge when this conflict ends, which I think is going to end in the near future. You see, Vladimir Putin has categorically said that any negotiations will only be starting after the Ukrainian neutrality would be asserted, would be agreed, and number two, that Russian gains which they had made in the last 2.5 years would be accepted. Donald Trump's administration, I think, is willing to concede both of these demands. They are willing to concede the Russian gains, especially the 4 oblasts which the Russian armed forces has annexed on the eastern Ukrainian frontier, and also Crimean Peninsula. And also, I think the Donald Trump administration is willing to concede Ukrainian neutrality, that no NATO membership in Ukraine. Just a small discussion about the impact of the Trump's looming presidency and the war in Ukraine. You see, all the reports suggest the interviews of the possible Trump administration officers, the news reports in the liberal media outlets that the Donald Trump is not going to continue the Biden administration, which is the unconditional support of Ukraine, by pumping scores of billions of dollars in the Ukrainian military, in the Ukrainian regime. This is because, number one, that Russia has asserted its dominance in the battlefield, and number two, Donald Trump is opposed to wars in the frontiers. He wants the forces, he wants the dollars to be utilized in the US economy. Just a small snippet about the Chinese century of humiliation. You see, roughly from about 1840 onwards to about 1949, when the Chinese gained independence, Chinese remember that in their national, conscience, this century of humiliation, which started with the Opium Wars, when British, through its wealth, through its, tact, through its, military power, bombarded or kind of infused opium from the Indian plantations, from the African plantations into China, bargained due to its higher bargaining power, trade concessions, and then dominated, annexed Hong Kong, dominated China over the next 100 years or so. But then Chinese research, due to its creativity and due to what they call as learning from the barbarians. Just a small snippet about Nelson Mandela, arguably the greatest individual that lived in the 20th century. See, with his struggle, with his sacrifices, almost 27 years living in prison, of which about 20 years in Robben Island, a small, tiny island off the coast of Cape Town, devoid of any contacts with his family, his friends. And then, when he was released, with his political maneuvering, with his ethics, with his kind of big dream, he kind of combined the white South Africans and the black South Africans for a democratic, idealistic South Africa. It is because of him only that South Africa was saved from the bloodletting that could have ensued after the apartheid regime ended. Thank you so much.